The smallest fighter, Marcus and Michael Thompson, were born 3 months early, weighing just 2 pounds each. The doctors warned their mother Sarah that survival would be difficult, but both boys fought through their first year. However, Marcus faced an additional challenge that would shape his entire life. While Michael grew at a normal rate, Marcus remained significantly smaller. By age 5, he stood barely 3 feet tall while his twin brother towered over him at average height. The doctors diagnosed Marcus with a rare form of dwarfism that would limit his growth permanently. Growing up in downtown Atlanta, the twins attended the same elementary school. Michael naturally became Marcus's protector, walking beside him through hallways where other children stared and sometimes pointed. Marcus learned to develop a thick skin, but deep inside, he dreamed of being tall enough to play basketball like his heroes. The Thompson family didn't have much money. Sarah worked double shifts as a nurse while their father had left when the boys were toddlers. Despite their struggles, Sarah always encouraged both sons to chase their dreams. No matter how impossible they seemed, Marcus became obsessed with basketball, watching every Atlanta Hawks game on their small television. He practiced shooting hoops at the local community center, standing on boxes and chairs to reach the rim. Other kids laughed, but Marcus never gave up. He studied every move, every strategy, memorizing plays like other kids memorize video games. At age 10, Marcus stood only 3 feet 6 inches tall. Doctors confirmed that he would likely never grow beyond 4 feet. This news crushed his basketball dreams, but Marcus refused to accept defeat. He researched every professional player, learning that heart and determination sometimes mattered more than height. The community center where Marcus practiced was run by Coach Williams, a former college player who saw something special in the tiny boy's dedication. Coach Williams began working with Marcus individually, teaching him skills that didn't depend on height. Marcus learned to dribble faster than anyone, to think 3 steps ahead, and to inspire teammates through pure passion. Word spread through their neighborhood about the little boy with giant basketball dreams. Local high school players would stop by to watch Marcus practice, amazed by his skill and determination. Some even asked for tips on ball handling and court vision. Marcus's bedroom walls were covered with posters of NBA players, but one stood above all others. Shaquille O'Neal's massive frame dominated the center wall. Marcus wasn't drawn to Shaq because of his size, but because of his personality. Shaq always seemed happy, always lifted up others, and used his fame to help people. At 11 years old, Marcus learned that Shaq would be visiting Atlanta for a charity event. The event was expensive, with tickets costing more than Sarah's weekly paycheck. Marcus saved every penny from odd jobs around the neighborhood, but came up far short of the ticket price. Sarah watched her son count his savings every night, his face falling as he realized the impossible gap. She worked extra shifts, sacrificing sleep and meals, but still couldn't afford the tickets. The charity event was just 2 weeks away. Marcus decided to take action. He created a handwritten letter explaining his situation, his dreams, and his admiration for Shaq. The letter was 12 pages long, filled with basketball statistics, personal stories, and a heartfelt plea for just a chance to meet his hero. Getting the letter to Shaq seemed impossible. Marcus researched online at the library, finding addresses for Shaq's management company, the Lakers organization, and various charities. He made copies of his letter and mailed them everywhere he could think of. Days passed without response. Marcus checked the mail obsessively, running home from school each afternoon with hope in his eyes. Sarah's heart broke watching her son's excitement fade with each empty mailbox. The charity event was now just 5 days away. Marcus had given up hope of attending, but he hadn't given up on his letter reaching Shaq somehow. He convinced Coach Williams to drive him to the hotel where Shaq was reportedly staying. Standing outside the luxury hotel, Marcus looked incredibly small among the crowd of reporters and fans. Security guards blocked every entrance, making it impossible for a child to get through. Marcus clutched his letter, watching through the glass doors as people moved through the lobby. A hotel employee noticed the small boy standing alone. Something about Marcus's determined expression caught his attention. The employee, named James, approached Marcus and asked why he was there. Marcus explained his entire story to James, showing him the crumpled letter and describing his basketball dreams. James was moved by the child's sincerity and passion. He promised to try getting the letter to Shaq, though he warned Marcus not to expect too much. That evening, James delivered the letter to Shaq's room. Among hundreds of fan letters and business proposals, Marcus's handwritten pages stood out. The raw honesty and pure heart evident in every word caught Shaq's attention immediately. Shaq read the entire letter that night, learning about Marcus's medical condition, his family's financial struggles, and his unwavering basketball dreams. The letter included a photo of Marcus standing next to his twin brother, the size difference clearly visible. Something about Marcus's story touched Shaq deeply. Perhaps it was the reminder of his own childhood challenges, or maybe the pure love for basketball that transcended physical limitations. Shaq made a decision that would change Marcus's life forever. The next morning, Shaq called the Thompson home. Sarah answered the phone, initially thinking it was a prank call. When she realized the voice was genuine, she nearly dropped the phone. Shaq asked to speak with Marcus directly. Marcus couldn't believe he was actually talking to his hero. His hands shook as he held the phone, barely able to speak above a whisper. Shaq's warm voice immediately put him at ease, asking about his basketball practice and his dreams for the future. The conversation lasted 30 minutes. Shaq learned about Marcus's daily routine, his favorite plays, and his determination to keep improving despite his size limitations. By the end of the call, Shaq had made Marcus an offer that left the boy speechless. Dreams become reality. 3 months after meeting Shaq, Marcus's life had transformed completely. True to his promise, Shaq stayed in regular contact, calling Marcus every 2 weeks to check on his progress and offer encouragement. The phone calls became the highlight of Marcus's life. Shaq would review videos that Marcus sent showing his practice sessions, offering professional advice and celebrating improvements. More importantly, Shaq helped Marcus understand that basketball success could take many different forms. Word of Marcus's story spread through social media after the charity event. Videos of his ball-handling skills went viral, attracting attention from basketball coaches across the country. Suddenly, Marcus was receiving invitations to camps and clinics that had previously been impossible dreams. Coach Williams noticed the change in Marcus immediately. The boy's confidence had grown tremendously, and his skills were developing faster than ever. Marcus began teaching other kids at the community center, sharing techniques he had learned and inspiring younger children who faced their own challenges. Michael watched his twin brother's transformation with pride and amazement. The dynamics between the brothers had shifted as Marcus gained confidence and recognition. Michael no longer felt like he needed to protect Marcus constantly, and Marcus no longer felt like a burden to his family. Sarah was overwhelmed by the positive changes in her son's life. Marcus smiled more, stood taller, and approached challenges with newfound determination. The boy who had once been afraid to speak up in class was now giving interviews to local news stations about pursuing dreams, despite obstacles. 6 months after their first meeting, Shaq arranged for Marcus to attend a professional basketball camp in California. The camp was designed for elite high school players, but Shaq convinced the organizers to make an exception for Marcus. The other players at the camp were initially skeptical about the tiny 11-year-old among them. Most stood over 6 feet tall and had been recruited by major colleges. Marcus looked completely out of place walking onto the court, but when the drills began, Marcus silenced every doubter. His ball-handling skills were superior to players twice his size. His understanding of defensive positioning and offensive spacing impressed professional coaches. Marcus couldn't dunk or shoot over tall defenders, but he could do things with a basketball that seemed to defy physics. During scrimmages, Marcus held his own against much larger players. He scored points through speed and intelligence rather than size and strength. His passes were precise, his court vision was exceptional, and his competitive spirit inspired everyone around him. The camp coaches were amazed by what they witnessed. One coach later said that Marcus had taught him new techniques for developing guards, regardless of their height. Another coach invited Marcus to return the following summer as a teaching assistant. Most importantly, Marcus made friends with players from across the country. These teenage athletes who could have easily dismissed him instead embraced Marcus as a brother. They recognized his talent and respected his journey. On the final day of camp, Shaq surprised everyone by showing up to watch the closing scrimmage. He had flown in specifically to see Marcus play and to address all the campers about the importance of character in basketball. Standing before the group, Shaq pointed to Marcus and said, "This young man has something that can't be taught and can't be measured. He has the heart of a champion. I've played with all-stars and Hall of Famers, but I've never met anyone with more love for basketball than Marcus Thompson." The teenagers, initially starstruck by Shaq's presence, began to understand the significance of Marcus's inclusion in their camp. They realized they had been part of something special. Witnessing a young player whose impact on basketball would extend far beyond his ability to score points. After the camp ended, offers began pouring in for Marcus. Basketball academies wanted him as an instructor. Youth leagues requested his presence at clinics. Sports equipment companies were interested in featuring his techniques in instructional videos. Most significantly, a documentary filmmaker approached the Thompson family about telling Marcus's complete story. The filmmaker wanted to follow Marcus's journey over several years, showing how determination could overcome any obstacle. Marcus was initially nervous about the documentary, but Shaq encouraged him to participate. "Your story needs to be told," Shaq explained during one of their phone calls. "There are thousands of kids out there who feel different, who think their dreams are impossible. You can show them that anything is achievable." The documentary crew began filming Marcus's daily life, capturing his practice sessions, family interactions, and community involvement. They interviewed Coach Williams, Sarah, Michael, and eventually Shaq himself. During Shaq's documentary interview, the basketball legend became emotional discussing Marcus's impact on his own life. "People think I helped Marcus," Shaq said, his voice breaking slightly. "But the truth is, Marcus reminded me why I fell in love with basketball in the first place. He showed me that the game is about more than winning championships or making money. It's about the pure joy of playing." As Marcus's 13th birthday approached, Shaq planned the biggest surprise yet. He arranged for Marcus to attend an NBA game as his personal guest, sitting courtside and meeting players from both teams, but the real surprise came during halftime. The arena's big screen showed highlights from Marcus's journey, from his first letter to Shaq through his performance at various camps and clinics. The crowd of 20,000 people rose to their feet in applause. Marcus was then invited onto the court, where he demonstrated his skills during the halftime show. The professional players watched in amazement as this tiny teenager performed moves that left them shaking their heads in disbelief. The halftime demonstration became a turning point in Marcus's life. Videos of his performance were viewed millions of times online. Major sports networks featured his story. Basketball coaches from around the world requested information about his training methods. More importantly, Marcus began receiving letters from children facing their own challenges. Kids with disabilities, medical conditions, and other obstacles wrote to tell Marcus how his story had inspired them to pursue their dreams. Reading these letters, Marcus realized that his purpose extended beyond basketball. He had become a symbol of hope for anyone who felt limited by circumstances beyond their control. This responsibility was both humbling and empowering. On his 15th birthday, Marcus received the ultimate recognition. Shaq presented him with a custom jersey featuring Marcus's name and a number that represented his height when they first met. The jersey wasn't from any specific team, but rather represented Marcus's place in basketball history as an inspiration to players everywhere. "You asked me for help 3 years ago," Shaq said during the presentation. "But you didn't need my help to achieve your dreams. You just needed someone to believe in what you already had inside you. Now the whole world believes in Marcus Thompson." Marcus, now standing 4 feet tall and still growing slowly, looked up at his mentor with tears in his eyes. The scared 11-year-old who had written that first letter was gone, replaced by a confident young man who understood his unique place in the basketball world. "Thank you for seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself," Marcus replied. "You didn't just change my life. You showed me that I could change other people's lives too." As they embraced, the size difference that had once seemed so significant felt completely irrelevant. They were simply two basketball players who had found inspiration in each other's stories. Marcus's journey was far from over. He continued developing his skills, inspiring others, and proving that dreams have no height requirements. But the scared little boy who had begged Shaq for help no longer existed. In his place stood a young man who had learned that the biggest victories come from the smallest beginnings. The documentary about Marcus's life would eventually win awards and inspire basketball programs worldwide. But for Marcus, the greatest achievement was simpler. He had shown the world that determination, heart, and love for the game matter more than any physical limitation. Years later, when Marcus became a successful coach and motivational speaker, he would always return to that first meeting with Shaq as the moment his real life began. Not because Shaq gave him opportunities, but because Shaq helped him realize that those opportunities had been inside him all along. The meeting that changed everything. Shaq invited Marcus and his family to not just attend the charity event, but to be his personal guests. He arranged for a limousine to pick them up, covered all expenses, and promised Marcus a private meeting before the public event began. Sarah could hardly believe what was happening. She had worked so hard to provide for her boys, often going without so they could have what they needed. Now, one of the most famous athletes in the world was rolling out the red carpet for her son. The day of the event arrived with Marcus barely able to contain his excitement. He wore his best clothes, which Sarah had carefully pressed the night before. Michael was equally excited, proud of his twin brother for never giving up on his dreams. The limousine arrived at their modest apartment building, drawing stares from neighbors. Marcus felt like royalty as they drove through Atlanta toward the event venue. Sarah held back tears, watching her son's face light up with pure joy. The venue. They were escorted through a private entrance, avoiding the crowds and media. Marcus's eyes grew wide as they walked through hallways lined with basketball memorabilia and championship banners. Then came the moment Marcus had dreamed about for months. Shaq appeared around the corner, and Marcus was struck by just how enormous the basketball legend truly was. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, Shaq made Marcus look even smaller than usual. But Shaq immediately knelt down to Marcus's level, extending his massive hand for a gentle handshake. The size difference was incredible. Shaq's hand completely engulfed Marcus's tiny fingers. Yet there was nothing but warmth and genuine interest in Shaq's eyes. "So you're the young man who wrote me that amazing letter?" Shaq said with his famous smile. "I've been looking forward to meeting you, Marcus." Marcus was starstruck, barely able to speak. Shaq sensed his nervousness and began asking simple questions about basketball, gradually helping Marcus relax and find his voice. Soon, Marcus was talking enthusiastically about his favorite plays and strategies. Shaq was genuinely impressed by Marcus's knowledge of the game. The boy understood basketball at a level that surprised even the NBA legend. Marcus could break down complex plays, analyze different coaching strategies, and discuss player statistics with remarkable accuracy. "You know more about basketball than some professionals I've played with," Shaq told Marcus, and meant every word. "Your size doesn't matter when you understand the game like this." They spent an hour together before the public event began. Shaq showed Marcus around the facility, explaining different aspects of professional basketball that most fans never see. Marcus absorbed every word, asking thoughtful questions that revealed his deep passion for the sport. During their conversation, Shaq learned more about Marcus's daily life. The boy practiced basketball for 3 hours every day after school, studied game footage online, and had developed innovative techniques to compensate for his height disadvantage. Marcus demonstrated some of his ball-handling skills, showing Shaq moves he had invented to navigate around much taller players. Shaq was amazed by the boy's creativity and determination. Marcus could dribble the ball in patterns that seemed impossible, keeping it so low that even Shaq had trouble following it. "You've got skills I wish I had when I was playing," Shaq admitted. "Height gets you noticed, but heart keeps you in the game. And you've got more heart than anyone I've ever met." The conversation took a serious turn when Marcus opened up about the challenges he faced daily. Kids at school often treated him differently, not just because of his size, but because of his intense focus on basketball. Some called his dreams unrealistic or even silly. Shaq listened intently as Marcus described the loneliness he sometimes felt, being so different from other children his age. Even his relationship with his twin brother Michael had complicated moments, as Michael tried to protect Marcus but sometimes made him feel more isolated. "Let me tell you something," Shaq said, his voice becoming more serious. "I was different too. I was always the biggest kid in every room, and people made assumptions about me because of my size. They thought I was just big and nothing else. But we know better, don't we?" Marcus nodded, hanging on every word. Here was someone who understood what it felt like to be defined by physical appearance rather than character or ability. Shaq continued. "The difference between dreamers and achievers isn't size or natural talent. It's refusing to quit when things get hard. You've already proven you're an achiever, Marcus. You just don't know it yet." As the public event began, Shaq insisted that Marcus stay by his side throughout the evening. They walked onto the stage together, where hundreds of people were gathered for the charity fundraiser. The crowd was initially confused seeing the tiny boy next to the basketball giant. But when Shaq began telling Marcus's story, the entire room fell silent. He spoke about the letter, the dedication, and the incredible spirit of this 11-year-old, who refused to let anything stop his basketball dreams. Marcus felt nervous with so many people staring at him, but Shaq's presence gave him confidence. When Shaq asked him to demonstrate his ball-handling skills for the crowd, Marcus performed flawlessly. The audience erupted in applause, amazed by what they witnessed. "This young man has taught me something tonight," Shaq announced to the crowd. "He's shown me that the size of your dreams matters more than the size of your body. Marcus Thompson is going to achieve great things, and we're all going to remember this moment." After the public event ended, Shaq had one more surprise for Marcus. He had arranged for Marcus to practice with some local high school players in the venue's gymnasium. Shaq wanted to see Marcus in action on a real court. Marcus played with incredible intensity, showing moves that left the teenage players shaking their heads in amazement. He couldn't jump high or reach over defenders, but his speed and court vision were remarkable. He scored several baskets using techniques that nobody expected watching Marcus play. Shaq realized that this boy had genuine talent that transcended his physical limitations. Marcus understood spacing, timing, and strategy in ways that took most players years to develop. The evening concluded with Shaq presenting Marcus with a personalized Lakers jersey and a basketball signed with an inspiring message. But the real gift was the conversation that followed, where Shaq made Marcus a promise that would change everything. "I want you to stay in touch with me," Shaq said. "Send me videos of your practices, tell me about your progress, and never stop working toward your goals. I'm going to help you find opportunities to showcase your skills." As they said goodbye, Marcus hugged Shaq around his massive leg, the only part he could reach. Shaq lifted Marcus up easily, bringing him to eye level for their final words of the evening. "Remember what I told you tonight," Shaq said. "You're not the smallest player on the court. You're the player with the biggest heart. Never forget that." The ride home in the limousine was quiet, with Marcus processing everything that had happened. Sarah watched her son stare out the window, knowing that something fundamental had changed in his life during those few hours. That night, Marcus carefully placed his signed basketball and jersey in his room. But the real treasure was the confidence he now carried inside. Shaq had seen something special in him, something that Marcus was just beginning to understand himself.